Introduction. Xiyan followed the system to shuttle to the small world to complete tasks in exchange for what he wanted. The first job offer was simple, with a short tenure, but when faced with a little pity, he reached out to help and was laid off. Working on a job is uncontrollable, and even if you work honestly, there may be times when you are from a foreign country. After being on duty n times, Xiyan returned to his familiar country and encountered the once pitiful little one again, realizing that he had actually done something bad with kindness. In order to make up for her mistake, she exchanged her hard-earned goodwill value for something and turned it into a negative asset. In order to accumulate good impression value, I went to work one by one, hurriedly for decades, and gradually adapted to the days of traveling and working. However, when faced with someone with a strange wish and something beyond her principles, she gave up and continued to work in the next shell. As the saying goes, fate is better than human calculation. By chance, she stumbled upon the path, and countless grass, mud, and horses ran wildly, unable to save her. What's wrong with the system crying uncontrollably despite the fact that everything is already done and can only be accepted? She should be crying, right, wrong or wrong, I fulfilled my last wish and wanted to be laid off early, but unexpectedly encountered a second unexpected event and was blown back into this world. It is often said that life is full of ups and downs, and Xiyan couldn't help but sigh. She has tasted a lot in a small world, and naturally has also suffered a lot. Nevertheless, in order to achieve their respective goals, she and the system still need to work hard. Mi Jun's new book features a slow-paced storyline with a fast-paced life mode, where the main character is tasked with creating a fictional world background. The plot of fictional characters should not be taken into account and should not be crossed out. Pit product guarantee, if you like it, please bookmark it. Thank you. Keywords of the novel. Kuai Chuanzhi is making vows every day without pop-ups. Kuai Chuanzhi is making vows every day. Download the complete set of TXT, Kuai Chuanzhi is making vows every day, and read the latest chapter on vows every day. Chapter 1. Favorite value of picking search. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Favorite value of picking search. In the distance, the sun is setting in the west, and the swans on the lake are playing, creating a beautiful scenery. As evening approached, many visitors to the park continued to walk outside, except for an elderly lady who was still sitting upright, occasionally showing a gloomy and regretful expression. However, as she was sitting alone on a bench under a tree, she did not attract anyone's attention. Are you sure this is where it is? But I see kids being taken with them. The old man seemed to be talking to himself, because there were no people around her who were close to her, so naturally no one would talk to her. One sentence after another, it was clearly a conversation with people, looking eerie as if someone was talking to her next to her. Isn't that right? It's just that there's not Ah Piao who can't be seen next to him, but Xiyan is talking to his own bound system. 009, are you sure it's here? Host, it's really here. Just be patient and wait. But everyone has to go home to cook or eat, who is full and why come here when they have nothing to do? Xiyan was depressed. Speaking of which, she was originally a half-hearted writer who balanced the world. With only a small transparent piece for 10,000 years, the royalties she earned were enough for her to survive hunger. My father passed away for many years, my mother was a mentally ill person, my older brother had a disability in his eyes, and my younger brother almost took her to heaven because of some things. From then on, a rift arose. After 30 years old, she divorced again. The ups and downs of life are enough for her to fully understand that everything in this world is possible, but money cannot be without. She may not use it herself, but her family must save some, at least there are grain seeds that can be used in emergencies, so she works hard to write novels, but unfortunately, it is still a small transparent one. She doesn't make much money and only needs to maintain her own life, without any extra. Since childhood, she has had a longing for her younger brother's eyes to be cured. However, she has seen countless doctors and ultimately spent money. Her eyes are still not cured, and high strabismus is not a problem with the cornea, but a result of damage to the visual nerve. With today's technology, it is far from reaching the ability to repair the visual nerve, so it can be said that she is destined for lifelong disability. However, yesterday she fell asleep while coding, and then dreamt of a light ball claiming to be a system object, saying that it could bind with her to balance the world and complete tasks, earn favorable points, and exchange for the divine medicine she longed for. Although Wu Xiyan is not smart, she is not good at losing money. In the system, she is full of sincerity and promises that even if the task fails, her favorability will not be deducted. She will not harm herself or her family, nor will her soul disappear. Such irreversible events will occur, and most importantly, she will not delay her life in this world. The system says that going to the small world to do tasks can make use of her evening rest time. The system says that due to different time flow rates, it is possible for her to complete a task in just 1 minute of sleep in this world, which can be as long as a few hours, and at most not more than 12 hours. As it would not affect her daytime work at all, she agreed to bind the system to it and go to the small world to do tasks. Then the first task world is now here. To gain goodwill, she wants to do good deeds and take pleasure in helping others. But the balanced world she entered was on different planes, because Wu Xiyan did not have her own body to use, and could only use this world power on people without life characteristics, because that would not be considered as encroaching on others' lives. Of course, she can also use her own body, but currently it is the first world and she does not have any favorability value to exchange, so she can only use someone else's shell to do tasks in this world. As for the favorability value required to use her own body, it is astronomical in her eyes, and the system says it is not recommended to use the body to do tasks. She will understand the details in the future. As for the standard for successful tasks, it is to accumulate 1,000 favorable points in this world. After achieving it, she will receive a completion score, and the points obtained can be exchanged for purchasing pills, money, and so on. After completing the task, she will enter the next level world. After removing the accumulated points, the favorable points will have to be collected from scratch. Just thinking about it, accumulating points is difficult enough. System 1009. You are just one. Of course, the system did not answer like this, and it also knows that the host is following what it detected. Someone needs help to let the host come here. 009, there's a child over there, it shouldn't be her. Yes, host, it's her. Go quickly, she's about to fall into the lake later. I'll go, she fell down. Ah, help. Gollum. Someone across the street noticed it. Someone shouted, someone fell into the river. Host, hurry up. Get up. There must be dozens of likes, rush. How fast do you think I can run with this body weighing over 100 pounds? Wu Xiyan was also depressed, but she still dragged her heavy body and ran quickly towards that side. Someone in the distance knew, but there was no one closer than her, so she immediately jumped down. Don't be afraid, little sister, don't be afraid. Help. Gollum. Feng Xintian dragged her body towards the little girl who was 3 meters away from the lake shore. To be honest, she couldn't swim either. But fortunately, the lake water could see her mouth, and the shell she is using now is over 1.6 meters. No matter how deep it is likely to be saved with her life. Help me, Grandma, help me. Don't be afraid, I've caught you. At this point, many people around had already arrived at the shore. Obviously they didn't know how to swim, so they were just in a hurry on the shore. Host, you grab her and walk back all the way, it's okay. Wu Xiyan didn't answer the system. She grabbed the little girl's hand and pulled towards her, who held her tightly like a lifebuoy. It's also a shame that there's no need to swim, otherwise Wu Xiyan would have drowned too. Slowly returning to the shore, there were also swimmers who jumped into the water to help carry the frightened child onto the shore. And with everyone's help, Wu Xiyan naturally got ashore, but she was soaked all over and luckily it wasn't winter, otherwise she could have frozen to death. Thank you big sister. No need, I happen to see it too. You should take a look at your child. Ding. Favorite score plus 0.1, currently with a favorability score of 0.1. What? Shoo, host, don't speak. A group of people comforted the little girl, and the people around also said they were lucky to have you or something like talking to Wu Shi. Wu Xiyan, who was dealing with it while waving his hand, was extremely depressed because in his mind, except for the child's mother who gave her a favorable rating of 0.1, everyone else only gave her 0.01. The child was fine, and the wet clothes made Wu Xiyan uncomfortable, so they asked them to take a look at the child's side and then slipped away. As he walked, he said, 009, are you joking? Why is your favorability so low? The total favorability value is only 0.18. How many people can be saved to increase to 1,000? Wu Xiyan thought about it and felt overwhelmed. I thought it would be easy, but the result is that there is indeed no free lunch in the world. When System 1009 heard it, it thought it had heard it wrong. It immediately reviewed it 10 times and finally confirmed that it was not wrong. However, it was the first-generation system and the first time it was put into use, and there was no reference to any information. Therefore, it had no idea that saving people would only give a little positive rating. Mi Jun's new book has been released, expected to be a $1 million novel, with 550,000 manuscripts currently available. If you like it, please bookmark it. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. The Little Pity I First Met. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. The Little Pity I First Met. Host, I didn't know it would be so low either. I thought there were at least 10 points or something like that. I was the first generation to invest in the system, and I didn't know how difficult it was to gain favor. Wu Xiyan was surprisingly speechless. Alright, I got it. A newbie system coin. System 1009 knows that it is at fault, so it remains silent. The maximum extension time for this shell is 10 days. How many shells do I need to exchange to collect 1000 likes? The host doesn't have to worry, those bodies are exchanged for the duration of your entry based on world data, not necessarily only 10 days, some may be 10 months, or even 10 years. Wu Xiyan said, I still have to hope to get a shell that can last for a longer time in order to do more good deeds, so that I can gain more favorable feelings. System 1009. There really needs to be such a hope. For the system that pretends to be dead directly, Wu Xiyan doesn't say much either. After returning home, he washes it and goes to bed after eating. The shell that enters this world can only be used after being out of breath, which means that the original body she uses now is approved by the system after dying from illness before she can go on duty. Then, she uses the shell's body to perform tasks in this world and fulfill her wishes. The shell currently being used is an elderly person living alone, who is already 60 years old this year and suffers from a heart attack. Before Wu Xiyan arrived, he passed away due to the heart attack. She has no children and no room to rent, but she has over 1 million yuan in savings in her card. After retiring at the age of 50, she started a small business for a few years, and with her monthly pension, she can't eat much. Most of it is saved in her savings book. When Wu Xiyan learned that the old man had passed away alone, he also felt a bit sad. However, due to the fact that the original owner himself was a reclusive person and his isolated neighbors were not very familiar with him, he waited for his odor to be discovered. Now that she has come to work, she will definitely help the elderly arrange the rest of the things. It's better to be known for being so miserable when the house smells. Rolling back and forth for half an hour, Wu Xiyan sighed helplessly. Host, I'm sorry, I didn't know this value was so low either. Watching Wu Xiyan speechless throughout the entire process, he tossed and turned and couldn't sleep. System 1009 thought it was because of the points he received every time he had a good impression value. Speaking of which, he also felt guilty. When he entered the small world, he encountered chaos in time and space, almost destroying his body. Therefore, some of his data was missing, and there were not many facts he could do. He also hoped that the mission would be successful, so that he could earn points and repair himself. It's okay, it's not your fault anyway. You've also said that when you encounter turbulence in time and space, you almost died. Being able to bind you gave me hope, and my life will also be much more interesting. It's okay, let's find a few more shells. There will always be enough to save one day. Yes, host, don't worry, I will try my best to find opportunities to accumulate more favorable feelings for you. 009, why don't I call you Xiao in the future? It's better than the number of 009, it sounds like a spy number. The system immediately exclaimed with joy upon hearing this, okay, host, no, then let's call you Yen from Xiaojiu onwards. It's more friendly. As you please. Wu Xiyan rolled over and wanted to sleep, but she found herself in love with the bed. Yen, if you're tired, go to sleep. Aren't you used to not being able to sleep? Is there any way? How about I play you a lullaby? Do you have a lullaby? Then give it a try. After the system responded, Wu Xiyan felt a burst of soothing music playing in her head. She didn't know if it was the effect of her brain waves, but after listening for less than half a minute, she felt drowsy and soon fell asleep. For the next week, Wu Xiyan helped according to the various good people and good deeds detected by the system. After a busy week, his favorability increased by 0.3, and he fell ill on the 8th day. A few days ago, it rained and turned into a drenched chicken. Coupled with a week of hard work and the fact that this shell is 62 years old, it's normal to get sick from exhaustion. Yen, get up and buy some fever-reducing medicine before you go to sleep. At the nth call of the system, Wu Xiyan got up with a heavy body to wash his face and brush his teeth before leaving. The weather is still so bad, with light rain and occasional gusts of wind. Cities near the sea in the south have abnormal weather. Typhoons come and go across the mountains, and even passing by the roadside can cause the surrounding cities to be unstable. The residential area is a city village. Although it was built for a long time, because it is a unified construction, there are also shops for basic daily necessities such as fruits, vegetables, and meat, as well as pharmacies. There are even 3 or 4 of them, as well as private clinics. Wu Xiyan dragged his body to buy antipyretic medicine, then went to the shop to eat breakfast, finished eating, and packed for a day before returning. Her building is of the same character, 7 floors high. She lives on the 3rd floor at 308, and there is a small garden downstairs. I wanted to go back and lie down after taking the medicine, but the system said that there was a stray cat mother here who gave birth to a kitten. She hasn't eaten for the past few days due to the rain, so when packing, she also packed some meat for the mother cat. Helping small animals is not worth it, so Wu Xiyan should be doing good things. Ding! The favorability value has increased by 0.01, and the current favorability value is 0.49. Wu Xiyan, who was chatting with Wu Xiyan in his mind, was stunned for a moment before asking, Xiaojiu, I haven't done anything good. How could there be an increase in favorability? Didn't you tell me that feeding cats won't increase favorability? Didn't you? Yes, only people have good feelings, and I'm also surprised. The system also feels strange because detecting people who need help requires energy, so when Wu Xiyan doesn't go out, the detection function won't be turned on, so naturally it won't know who gave a positive rating. Yen, let me test it. Wu Xiyan nodded and continued to watch the mother cat eat. She had also fed the stray cat several times, but the mother cat was afraid of being caught and not being fed, so she took 2 steps back to eat. Have you found who it is? The system says, Yen has found it. Look behind the cardboard box on the lower side of the stairs on the left. There's a little boy hiding there, and his favorability is his. Wu Xiyan's doubt. Child. Upon hearing this, Wu Xiyan turned his head and saw a small head that had been caught and instinctively hid. Oh, Yen, he seems to have soaked himself. Where is he hiding to hang his clothes? Wu Xiyan stood up and walked over. This child seems to be a resident of the apartment in the corner of the 7th floor of our building, called a bastard. These parents are not reliable either. What was their name given? They are indeed unreliable parents who call their children like this. As Wu Xiyan approached, he noticed that the rope behind the cardboard box was covered in a damp school uniform. At this moment, he was wearing wrinkled, washed white clothes that looked like an adult hoodie. He looked like a child about 6 or 7 years old, and was looking at himself with a wary and nervous expression, with a hint of fear. He even instinctively grabbed a stick with his right hand. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Children are truly generous. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Children are truly generous. This shouldn't be against her, right? Wu Xiyan pulled out a gentle smile and said, "Child, why are you hiding here? This place is usually used for storing miscellaneous items and storing unwanted cabinets. There aren't many people coming here, and if it weren't for feeding the cat, Wu Xiyan wouldn't have come here. So how long did this child stay here? Are your clothes wet? Why don't you go home? Aren't your parents at home?" The little boy remained vigilant as he looked at her, clearly without any intention of answering. The system said, Yen, the child is probably afraid of the original owner. Maybe, looking at me so vigilantly is also a building, I must have seen it before. This child. By the way, you heard someone arguing on the 7th floor the day before yesterday. I remember it seems like this child belongs to that couple. Wu Xiyan frowned. You don't even need to throw away the child in an argument. If you don't want to have one, don't give birth. If you don't take good care of it, it's simply inferior to livestock. That's it. Gulu. Wu Xiyan was talking to the system in your mind, but suddenly he heard this sound and didn't continue talking to the system. And this little brat has asked so many questions without saying anything, probably because his parents are not at home at noon, so he probably won't get a reply if he asks again. In addition, his fever hasn't subsided yet, and the feeling of nodding heavily and feeling light on his feet after taking the medicine is even more obvious. The little boy's stomach moaned as if he was aware of something, and his face became a little more rosy. Are you hungry? Wu Xiyan reached out to take away the blocked paper, and the little boy instinctively stepped back, then bumped into the second can placed behind him, making some clattering sounds. Yen, I didn't detect that his parents were at home. Maybe he won't come back at work at noon. Seeing the little fart child staring at her with a vigilant expression from beginning to end, and the cold and distant aura of not wanting money, she remained silent. Wu Xiyan couldn't help but ask the system in her mind. Xiaojiu, do I look terrible now? Do I hate it? No, your shell's appearance doesn't have the previous stereotypes and alienation when you smile. It may be that this child is afraid of strangers and not familiar with you, so this reaction is normal. Upon hearing this, Wu Xiyan nodded and agreed with the system's statement. She specially bought 2 portions of noodles, which were still warm and uncomfortable. When she felt uncomfortable, she would take a nap and estimate that it would be dark. One of the portions used for lunch would definitely be wasted. I just bought this, you can eat it. I'm leaving. If there's no place to go, go find me at 308. My surname is Zhao. After finishing speaking, Wu Xiyan put down one of the noodles and turned away. After a moment, the mother cat had already eaten enough and walked towards the stairs. Ding! The favorability value has increased by 0.1, and the current favorability value is 0.59. Wu Xiyan, who was going upstairs, paused in his footsteps without turning back and continued upstairs. Yen, this child is generous. He gave you such a good impression, equivalent to 10 people. It seems that he lacks love from others. In the future, he will find more children to take care of according to this. The system excitedly spoke, and Wu Xiyan casually handled it. She was very tired at the moment and just wanted to go back and take a nap. The little boy under the stairs, who appeared to be about 6 or 7 years old, was actually 9 years old. At this moment, he heard the footsteps disappear, looked at the ground with noodles, and swallowed his saliva. After a moment, he reached out and reached for it, feeling the scorching temperature. After watching for a while, he began to eat slowly. When Wu Xiyan lay in bed, feeling drowsy, he seemed to hear what the system was saying, but he ignored it because he was too tired from taking the medicine. I slept until it was dark and lacquered, but the fever subsided. The noodles I bought in the morning heated up and I ate them in the living room. Yen, the couple hasn't returned yet. It's already 9 o'clock and I don't know what to do with the child. Wu Xiyan hesitated for a moment before realizing that the system was referring to the little boy who had received a positive rating of 0.2 from Kong Gai in the morning. I took a sip of noodles and looked out the window. It was still drizzling outside, and by the window, I happened to see a room on the 7th floor with no lights on. Why don't we go see him? If there's anything we can do to help, maybe we can get a favor rating. In the morning, we received a favor rating equivalent to 20 people. Indeed generous, she worked hard to accumulate a liking value of 0.3 after going out, and it's also a shame that she won't deduct the liking value when doing tasks. Otherwise, she wouldn't have deducted enough of this. However, I saved up 2/3 of these days in just one morning. In this comparison, it's faster to find children to save, so I want to try my luck. After finishing, let's go downstairs and take a look. If we're not there, we'll probably go home. Oh, the lights are on. At the same time as turning on the lights, there were figures swaying, accompanied by the sound of cursing, making it difficult to hear clearly as it rained. It's always cursing, and naturally it won't sound good either. Yen, he has gone home, you don't need to go downstairs. After finishing a bowl of noodles, my stomach was already full. After tidying up, I continued to watch TV. By the way, Xiaojiu, do I still have 2 days left? The system heard Yen and said, to be precise, it's 52 hours, 32 minutes, and 58 seconds. Why did Yen suddenly ask this question? Are you afraid? Don't worry, it really doesn't hurt. It's just that your consciousness is pulled out and enters the next shell, and there may be a feeling of falling. Well, I'm a bit worried. I'm afraid of pain the most. Don't worry, it won't hurt. Besides, I'm bound to you. If you have an accident, I will also have one, so I will protect you. Don't worry. Thank you first, then. Just as he was speaking, a loud curse could be faintly heard from outside the window. Wu Xiyan let out a low sigh and said, the family is not harmonious, and children suffer the most. The system knew about Wu Xiyan's situation and didn't know what to say for a moment, but couldn't let it go like this. The system saw drizzling rain outside the window and said, Yen, we still need to work hard to accumulate good feelings tomorrow. Why don't we go wash and sleep? It's also good. Although Wu Xiyan felt like he had slept for a whole day, it was better to wash up and sleep than to listen to the arguments outside and make himself restless. If she really can't sleep, let the system give her a lullaby, and she can definitely fall asleep quickly. The next morning, Wu Xiyan woke up and felt that resurrection with full blood was good, but unfortunately, this shell didn't have much time. After washing up, I went to the community to have breakfast at a restaurant because I came early and the sky was still drizzling, so no one was eating. Wu Xiyan ordered soybean milk porridge and steamed stuffed buns to eat at the table beside the door, while chatting with the system. Yen, it's the child from yesterday. Hearing this, Wu Xiyan looked outside and saw that the steamed bun boss was holding a mantou to the little boy with an umbrella. The boy handed the money and left. The landlady looked sympathetically at her husband who was making vermicelli behind her and said, that child's hand was injured again. These parents are really damn. The boss replied, whenever a couple quarrels, it affects their children, it's simply not human. I also pity that child. When Wu Xiyan lowered his head to eat, he spoke to the system in his mind. Xiao, was that child beaten last night? Changes every day. Then let's watch it every day. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Completion of the first task. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Completion of the first task. After a moment of silence, the system said, well, after you fell asleep, I boredly checked. The two of them had a fight last night, and the child was also used as an outlet. The injury on his hand was caused by the couple hitting him on the side during a fight. Xiao, is that child going to school? The system said, well, it seems like he went to the place downstairs to go to school after going to school. Yen suggested that we might be able to help that child. Yesterday, we gave him a bowl of noodles and gave him so much goodwill. Your shell doesn't have much time, and I don't know where the next shell is. If it's nearby, please help more. We don't have to work so hard to accumulate goodwill, right? Wu Xiyan also felt that after all, that child was generous. After breakfast, Wu Xiyan resumed her daily routine of accumulating good feelings. I didn't go back until 12 o'clock, and then I bought 2 portions of roasted duck rice at a fast food restaurant to sneak back, just like yesterday when I went there to feed the mother cat. Yen, he is really here. Wu Xiyan paused in his footsteps. Didn't you get wet today, did you? No, it seems to be eating something. Wu Xiyan nodded and pretended to look for the mother cat as if nothing had happened. Meow. Meow. The scholar cat barked a few times, and the mother cat from the grass outside the stairs soaked out. Perhaps she had stayed in the grass for some time, and her fur was getting wet. Eat it, little one, your fur is all wet. Ding. The favorability value has increased by 0.1, and the current favorability value is 0.69. Yen, this child is really generous, 1 is worth 10. By the way, did he look at me? Yes, I'm secretly watching you. At this moment, there was the cry of a kitten in the grass. The mother cat heard the sound and called a few times, then 5 kittens ran out of the grass one after another. It's your child. I'll bring you some congee tomorrow. Ding. The favorability value has increased by 0.1, and the current favorability value is 0.79. Yen, at it again. Wu Xiyan didn't say a word, nodded, pretended to let the little kitten get close, and moved his body just in time to catch someone peeking at his little head. Hey, kid, are you here again? Didn't you get wet today, did you? Ding. The favorability value has increased by 0.1, and the current favorability value is 0.89. The system was already overjoyed and immediately shouted to Wu Xiyan to give the food to that child. The other party did not see him as vigilant as yesterday this time, and the cold and distant feeling was still there, but at this moment, their eyes were a bit more puzzled. Are your parents not at home? Wu Xiyan watched the little boy shrink silently into the corner, and suddenly felt a bit heartbroken. I have ordered an extra portion of rice, here's one for you. The little boy stirred his nose a few times, clearly smelling the fragrant kiss of the roasted duck. He lowered his gaze and glanced at the rice that Wu Xiyan had put down. Knowing that she was there, the little boy wouldn't eat, so after putting it down, Wu Xiyan stood up. I should go back too. If you have any difficulties, you can come find me. There's nothing else you can help with, there's always something to eat. The little boy lowered his head, leaving only a cute hairpin for Wu Xiyan. Yen, let's go, the child will eat it later. Wu Xiyan nodded and said, I'm leaving. Wu Xiyan didn't stop long after finishing speaking, but turned around and went upstairs, carrying his portion of roasted duck rice. Yen, don't always nod your head, get used to talking to me in your mind, otherwise people will think of you as a lunatic. I know, I'm not just bound to you. I can get used to it for a while. You nodded again. It's been over a week now, and the minor issue needs to be corrected. Got it. After Wu Xiyan turned around, he didn't notice the little boy behind him looking at her in shock. It was just a moment, and his thin face still had a hint of confusion. After a moment of confusion, he quickly retracted his small head back into the area covered by the paper. The child was not familiar with her, so Wu Xiyan turned around and went upstairs like before. When he turned around, the child would definitely eat the lunchbox. As Wu Xiyan thought, the sound of footsteps on the stairs decreased until it disappeared, and the little boy finally went to serve the meal. He even eagerly opened it and took a deep breath of the roasted duck aroma before starting to eat it. After returning home, Wu Xiyan received the child's favorable rating and felt a burst of joy. After all, among so many people, this child is the most generous. Of course, I didn't forget to discuss the child's situation with the system, and the system even decided on a similar plan to gain favorable feedback. Unfortunately, time is running out for this shell. Watching the host's emotions feel a bit low, the system immediately said, Yen, it took more than 10 hours. Indeed, there were still more than 10 hours left for her to do something. After thinking for a moment, Wu Xiyan said, why don't I give him 1,000 yuan? He's so thin and small, I'm afraid he often doesn't have lunch. That's also unreliable for his parents. The system felt that the child was also pitiful, so it also agreed with Wu Xiyan's approach. I remember you still have cash, so you can put it in a small box with the medicine and write a note for him. Well, it's possible. Wu Xiyan even tidied up and looked at the small box containing money, as well as her own band-aids and iodine solution, which were about to end school time. She followed her and stepped on it again, allowing the system to detect where the child had placed before returning here, which happened to be staggered from the little boy. I ordered a fast food from a restaurant in the community, and then went to find the most talkative meat seller in the community. I ordered 2 pounds of plum head meat from her, stating that she would definitely come to pick it up in person. If she forgot, she asked the meat seller to call her and specifically reminded her to call more times if she didn't hear anything. The other party also agreed and joked that if she didn't listen, the meat would be sold and delivered directly after 10 o'clock. It was really like this, and Wu Xiyan couldn't be happier. In fact, she agreed with a happy expression on her face. After all, this shell wouldn't stink before being discovered. Therefore, she paid first and talked to the meat seller for a while before leaving. When she arrived downstairs, she took a detour and went up the stairs where no one was walking. She fed the mother cat again before returning home. As for the things for the little boy, she received his favors shortly after she left, and when she ate them, she almost laughed foolishly. Therefore, we don't need to confirm her kindness. At least if the next shell is not nearby, the boy can have enough money to eat lunch. He doesn't need to eat a mantou when he grows up. If he is half hungry, he will be fat. In the early morning, it was time to take off this shell. Wu Xiyan had previously pulled back the curtains of the hallway facing the hall, so that she could just look inside and see a corner of the bedroom bed. Then she walked to the door and lay on her side. Xiaojiu, you can go now. Okay, Yen, close your eyes and wait for a while. Received the next job target information and is currently in the process of leaving the laid-off target. Wu Xiyan felt her consciousness being pulled away, without any pain, just feeling unable to speak or move. Afterwards, she fell asleep with a heavy drowsiness. Today's share has arrived. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Post number 2 registration. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Post number 2 registration. Opening her eyes again, Wu Xiyan saw a gray-black mosquito net with several patches. Yen, have you woken up? Where are we now? The system felt a bit regretful upon hearing this and said, Yen, we are no longer in Jincheng. It's a pity. You are now in a poor village called Earlyang village. Shell is a widow whose husband has died in the village, and there is a son who has just turned 18 who is working outside. There is a mother-in-law in her 60s who is currently living with Shell's uncle. Since Shell's husband passed away a year ago, the mother-in-law has felt that Shell is a nemesis, and various pressures do not welcome her. Therefore, half a year ago, after the family split, Shell took her son to live in a dilapidated house at the end of the village. Due to not having enough money to go to school, Shell's son will follow the villagers to work in the city after the new year. It is now late autumn, and the house is not warm enough due to the snow outside. Shell went to burn charcoal in the middle of the night, and it has been snowing for several days in a row. Everyone doesn't like to go out because it's cold, and after the snow stops, the villagers don't go to the end of the village. Shell is usually beaten to death, so the villagers don't talk much to him. Sometimes, people take a detour, and when there is no way out, they greet him face to face, but he doesn't respond. Therefore, after his son leaves, Shell works alone and rarely talks to anyone. Communication. No one knew she was dead. Upon hearing this, Xiyan couldn't help but ask, "This is so miserable. I didn't wear it until ancient times, did I?" "Don't worry, it's still in the same era. We were in the same time yesterday, and it's just early morning now." She burned charcoal last night, but since no one could talk to her, her mother-in-law and uncle also came. So after she died, she didn't smell so quickly in winter and was only discovered a month and a half later. At that time, she had already been partially eaten by mice. Finally, the village officials notified her son to come back and raised some money to bury the shell. What a pity, it's all in this era. Huck, I'm really full and have nothing to do. Who said not? This is not ancient, these people are really disgusting. Xiaojiu, why do you feel like you haven't seen the world before? Upon hearing this, the system immediately felt a little guilty and said, Yen, you forgot. There is some missing data in my system, and I am also a beginner. Therefore, there are some things that can only be learned like Yen. At the same time, they are recorded, which is what we call common growth. Xiyan's forehead twitched, but in fact, he didn't say much. Next time, you can show me the shell information yourself. It's tiring to tell me. The system is aware of its shortcomings, and coupled with the host's concern that it doesn't need to read it out, it naturally feels happy to respond. Good words, next time I will let you see directly, so I don't have to tell you. Xiyan has a rough understanding of the current situation of the shell being used, which is a backward small mountain village and an unwelcome person. This task is very disadvantageous. By the way, how long does this shell have the right to use it? Yen, this shell has been much longer than the previous one, a total of 58 days. So long, how is this calculated? When asked this question, the system really didn't know how to calculate it, so it said with a guilty conscience again. Well, Yen, I don't know either. After you enter shell, the system will have information about shell's identity and situation, as well as the available period of time. There is also shell's last wish. This time, Shell hopes not to die so long before being discovered and to go with dignity. Upon hearing this, Xiyan understood. The current system of emotions is useless, and I don't know how to calculate the shell time. As for the information, it is estimated that it was given to it from the top. When she first bound the system, she specifically asked if it could contact the head. The system said that due to its missing data, the contact function was still in use, but it was slow to receive and transmit data. However, the contact function module was still in use, depending on the length of time. If it weren't for this question, Xiyan wouldn't have known that the system had been wandering for more than a decade. It was said to be wandering, but in fact it was due to insufficient energy and partial data loss in the system, so it was almost always asleep. When it was asleep, it absorbed a drop of energy and restarted, and then received work data and a copy of energy from the headquarters, which allowed the system to operate normally. And it is said that the system also observed her for a long time when selecting her, but she had no idea about this matter. As long as the system takes her as the host to complete the task in the small world, the host can receive a task rating reward, and the system will also receive a rating reward. As long as the task completion score is higher, the corresponding reward points will be higher. As for failure, the system has stated that there will be no punishment, but there are still tasks to be completed in the small world. If she fails to complete the small world, she must accumulate good impression points and cannot leave the small world. The scoring standard for the task world is 1 to 100 points. As long as you are not foolish and have accumulated enough favorable points in the small world, there will at least be dozens of points that fail to earn points, just like a test paper. In addition to checking whether your exam questions are correct, you must also check whether your handwriting is neat, etc. Anyway, it is a 100-point test paper. As long as you complete it according to the last wish of the job shell, there will still be 50 points. Wu Xiyan felt that as long as she worked hard, she could always collect enough, even if it was harder and more time was spent, she could always accumulate a good impression value of 1000. After all, the system said there was no deadline, and the flow rate of the small world was different from the current flow rate of her life. She could understand why a task could be completed in just a few minutes, while the high difficulty world estimated that the task was difficult, and the current few hours were not too much. In the small world, she will go to different people to work, and the duration of each job will be different. Even if she has been in the small world for decades or hundreds of years, it will not affect the current life because the time flow in the small world is different. No matter how long the current life is, it will never exceed 12 hours, so she will not worry about the situation for her family. That's why she agreed to the system to do this part-time job. To put it bluntly, it is actually about mutual benefit and cooperation between each other. The system claims it is a legitimate system, although it is just a beginner system similar to an internship. It can be said that she was chosen after thousands of choices according to regulations. Therefore, at that time, Wu Xiyan even said a thank you, not a compliment, but a sincere one. After all, having a part-time job to get such a thing is her wish, and she really felt very lucky to be bound to the system. According to the system, they are both legitimate and irregular systems, similar to those organized by pirate gangs in her world. These systems are not good people, and there are all kinds of strange things that cannot be separated from them even if they are bound and not squeezed to death. And her binding to the system is just a task. After helping the system complete the transitional novice internship task period, she can be unbound according to the host's wishes. Of course, if the host performs well in the task, she may also be recruited as an employee of the Infinite Space Management Bureau. After she passes her life, she will go to the eternal world of infinite space to join, officially become an employee, and completely break away from the small world, which is equivalent to an eternal existence. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. 58 Days of Life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 58 Days of Life Middle Age. Well, even though she's only in her early 30s and has experienced so many things, she can still see it through. She's like herself, healthy and safe, and her family is also healthy and safe. She can afford to rent a house with food, and having some financial resources is enough. As for the concept of immortality mentioned by the system, she doesn't think that immortality is a good thing, so she just heard about it. Secondly, things are not done well at the moment, and it's not realistic to think so far. It's better to live a good life at the moment first. At the beginning, the system saw that she had little interest in discussing and just mentioned a few words, but it didn't work out. Realizing that his thoughts had deviated and he had driven too far, Wu Xiyan quickly pulled himself back onto his current shell. After all, this shell has 58 days, almost 2 months, and she can do a lot of things to gain goodwill. Speaking of which, the system said that the shells she used were all signed by those people, so it was able to migrate its soul to these shells for missions, and at the same time, it had to fulfill the other party's wishes. By the way, Xiaojiu, did you say that after finding your system to sign a contract, they disappeared, and all the requests were hoping that they wouldn't be exposed to zombies for so long after death? Of course not, different souls have different types of contract types because I am just a beginner in the system, and the task I receive is to collect favorability points, which is only a relatively simple type. Therefore, the shell I can control is only to make such simple wishes. In fact, they have some other wishes, but because their own willingness value is not enough, the agreement cannot generate those desired conditions, which is only the simplest conditions to sign. Oh, that means you need to upgrade in order to get other tasks, and then use the shell to get even more difficult wishes. System. This roughly means. So if you don't unbind me, let's work on tasks together. In the future, you will know what kind of tasks I can perform and what kind of shells I can use. There are plenty of things like billionaires and immortals and demons that you can't imagine. I think you and I are both doing tasks for the first time, so we chose a similar task world. That way, you won't feel uncomfortable with Yen, and it will be easier for you to do tasks. Wu Xiyan felt that the system was right. If she were to choose some unfamiliar immortals and ancient things, she would not be familiar with them. Instead, it would be easier to do tasks in a world she is familiar with. At least she is also doing tasks for the first time. Anyway, the system is probably as she thought. When doing a task for the first time, it's natural to choose a stable world, rather than just crashing in the first task world. There is no rule in my mission shell that you cannot leave the village where you belong, right? Don't worry, we can all use OOC, so there's no need for the shell to die in place. Let's pack up now and go to the city early tomorrow morning. Upon hearing this, the system immediately reminded Yen. Don't worry for now. Have you forgotten that this shell is so poor? The only savings in the family of over 200 yuan have been given to Shell's son for transportation, food, and accommodation expenses when he goes out to work. It took over a year to save up so much money, and those who rely on farming to the death are not as quick as those who work part-time in big cities. Even if they work as a garbage sorting administrator in a community for 8 hours a day, they can earn 30 yuan. Working for 10 days is more than what she has saved in a year and a half. The system says. Yen, after all, she is a native of the village and has not read a book. Like the older generation, she only knows how to farm, so you naturally cannot ask her to leave home and go to another place to make a living. Wu Xiyan tugged at her clothes, there were many patches, and it was still snowing outside, making her shiver uncontrollably. The system knew that the host had listened and would wait for the money before departing, so it continued to say, Yen, make a fire quickly, remember to open the window, otherwise carbon dioxide poisoning will occur, and we will have to go to the next shell in advance. Failure to fulfill the contract will result in a penalty of goodwill. I know, what kind of fire is there? Isn't there a place specifically for cooking? I might as well take the blanket and sleep next to it. Wu Shi spoke and walked out with a blanket in her arms. As soon as she saw the ventilated hall on 3 sides, she silently turned around and walked back. Xiaojiu, you make sense. Let's boil another plate of carbon. The system chuckled and replied, Xiaojiu, don't laugh. Yen, I didn't laugh, you heard me wrong. Wu Xiyan didn't want to speak. The sound in this system was anthropomorphic, and no matter how you listen, you feel like it's laughing from behind. As the saying goes, go to bed early and wake up tomorrow. Let's find a way to save money and leave the village together. After the system finished speaking, it immediately went offline and disappeared. Wu Xiyan snorted without comment. Anyway, every time this system slips away like this, it's okay to see it. It's still dark outside, even wearing thick clothes, the room is very cold, and I don't know how long it took to roll off and fall asleep. When Feng Xintian wakes up again, it is already dawn, and the most important thing is not to wake up naturally, but to be awakened by freezing. When she woke up, the system told her that it detected that there was still stock in the house, which could be sold for about 100 yuan and used as transportation expenses to leave the village. Wu Xiyan also thought it was feasible after listening to it. The system probably thought it was unfair last night and helped her come up with this solution. The system continues to ask. In that case, who is this millet sold to? The mother's family of this shell is no longer here, and there are no relatives, so it is difficult to borrow money. Besides, the uncle's family and the evil mother. In law in the village, except for their son who goes out to work, the shell can be said to have no relatives. Shell is indeed a pitiful person, despised by her mother. In law, and even the uncle's family disliked her. She was criticized by her mother. In law, and even the villagers didn't like her. It's really hard for her to speak up. Isn't there someone who can sell it? Who? Village officials. Everyone in this village doesn't like to see the shell, and the shell deliberately lowers the price when selling things, while the village officials who come once every 2 weeks don't. Upon hearing this, the system immediately said, yes, that's right. The mention of the death of the shell was only discovered during visits by village officials. The village officials are aware of the situation in this village, so when they come to the village, they will walk around. It was only when the village official came to visit that they discovered the death of the shell, otherwise the shell would not have been discovered until later. As for that, if you eat something, go to the village officials and tell them about your thoughts. By the way, sell the 12 chickens and eggs, so that there is no valuable thing left in the house. Anyway, the shell has to leave, so don't underestimate that wicked old woman. Well, anyway, just sell everything you can and exchange it for money. It's agreed that Wu Xiyan will cook breakfast and then go to another village cadre a few kilometers away after eating. The other party had seen Shell before, and it happened that the village cadre was at home today. So when they approached him and explained their intention, they initially did not agree with her ideas. However, later on, Wu Xi spoke about her situation in the village, and the other party was clearly aware of it. In the end, they helped her find a buyer. With the help of the village officials, the buyer was quickly found. It was from the same village as the village officials, and they happened to have a 3-wheeled electric vehicle at home, so they came back together. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Difficult Journey. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Difficult Journey. The system had already calculated all the things in Shell's house, except for the worthless pots and pans, along with preserved meat, firewood, potatoes, sweet potatoes, etc., and sold them all for a total of 320 yuan. The other party even came to pick them up in 2 installments. Wu Xiyan borrowed a phone number from the village officials to inform Shell's son because she was leaving the village. However, as the other party was working, she asked the person with the phone number to speak on her behalf, and the next morning, she took the person who bought her food to the town. Afterwards, I went to the station and bought Zhang to go to the busiest city nearby. As for the city where Shell's son is located, it is still far away, so she didn't plan to go, so she chose the nearest big city. Despite this, she took a long and late-night train to get there. At the moment of getting off the car, Wu Xiyan lay in the bathroom and vomited in the dark. When he calmed down, it was already daylight. Wu Xiyan looked at the pale face on the mirror, coupled with the old clothes on his body, and let out a fierce sigh. Yen, go buy a steamed bun to eat first. You didn't eat anything in the car and vomited heavily, so your stomach definitely can't bear it. I'll go. I remember when I was a child, taking a car was a nightmare. I didn't expect that now, in order to complete a mission, I have to relive the nightmare. Xiaojiu, you never said that my small problems will still follow in the small world of my mission. The system was in a bad position and immediately flattered, saying, Yen, these are not very important, and I didn't know you were like this. Besides, you also got several people's favor points in the car. This time we didn't get in vain, right? Next time, I will remember to ask you to buy some anti-motion sickness products. When the favor points are enough in the future, you can give me some, and I will apply for a goodwill value mall to exchange for some motion sickness oil and other products, so that I don't have to spend money on medicine. Wu Xiyan sat down on the bench with his bundle, looking at the people in the waiting room. He vomited faintly and then looked for some food to cushion his stomach. Listening to what the system said, she became curious. Is the mall something you carry with you for life, or can it only be used in this world? Can you take it with you after buying something? Can you exchange it for money in this world? As soon as the system heard that Wu Xiyan was interested, it immediately gave a 12-point boost to science popularization. The activation of the favorability value mall requires application, and after application, there are things that can be used in this world. It is currently unclear whether all worlds can have them, because we are a novice world, so I know that this world can definitely do it. Moreover, after opening the mall, your favorability value can also be exchanged for money, and the exchange rate is currently unknown. You need to open the mall to see it. However, the things you learn are in your mind, completely yours, so there is no need to worry about not taking them away. Upon hearing this, Wu Xiyan snorted. Her mind was not unforgettable, and for someone with average learning ability, remembering what the system said would be considered taking away the rough operation. She felt that it was unlikely for her to do so, so saying that idea in the end was equivalent to saying it in vain. However, there are a wide variety of things in the mall that require good impression value to purchase. Considering the pretentiousness of being a businessman, it is impossible to be a cheap product. Therefore, the things in the mall are definitely not cheap, because the difficulty of accumulating good impression value is evident. To put it simply, there is no such thing as a free lunch in the world. Although binding to the system is a lucky thing, she needs 999 system points to exchange for what she needs. If she completes top tasks excellently, she can earn 100 points, so she also needs to go to 10 small worlds. However, she feels that getting more than 50 points in each world is already impressive, so with this budget, she must go to twice as many worlds. It is difficult to accumulate favorable points, so she can open a shopping mall with favorable points. This issue can be considered later. As for money, it seems that in the current situation of this shell, it is still necessary to exchange money, but I don't know the ratio. Just repeating the previous ones will reveal that the exchange rate is definitely not high. After thinking for a while, Wu Xiyan asked, so how much goodwill does it take to open the mall? The system looked at the host and pondered for a while, thinking it would simply refuse. Upon hearing this question, it immediately exclaimed with joy. Because I am a novice system, and the host is also a novice, plus we are entering a novice world, we can directly discount 50%, only need 50 points. Hee hee. The system heard the host's laughter and felt a chill in its neck. It immediately shrank its neck and realized later that it didn't have a neck. Yen, why don't we just calculate first and consider it when we have more favorable feelings in the future? Wu Xiyan didn't speak, just picked up his bag and stood up to walk outside the station, clearly agreeing to the system's statement. The system glanced at its favorability score of 2.37, which was several tens of miles away from 50. It realized that it had stepped on the host's minefield again, so it silently shrank in a corner to reduce its presence and did not dare to escape, fearing that the host would become even angrier later. Speaking of how much goodwill there was still an extra shell. The child who had helped him, feeling sad about what happened after Shell's death, gave him a 0.5% goodwill value, which can be said to be the biggest way. Unfortunately, the host's shell is too far away from that city, and the money for buying tickets is not enough. That's why the host chose the nearest and largest city to come. Despite this, it cost nearly 60 yuan, and the host was so heartbroken that he wished he could wear the previous shell and get the money. As for the additional favorability value, it is because Wu Xiyan fulfilled the last wish of the previous shell and immediately obtained a favorability value, with a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 5. However, according to its known probability of drawing, the host's luck must be super good to have a chance of drawing more than 2. It is also fortunate that she did not ask about the probability of drawing more than 2, otherwise she would accuse it again. Another big problem is that it is aware that its system data is missing, and there may be a considerable amount of information that is unknown, so it is afraid of taking the host to step into the trap. As soon as I thought of this, the system couldn't help but silently sigh. Unification is difficult. Wu Xiyan looked around, bought a bowl of porridge, 2 vegetable bags, and a bottle of mineral water at a steamed bun shop, and sat down to eat in a corner where no one was there. Yen, are you really not going to find a fixed place to stay? At least there's a safe place to sleep and rest. Wu Xiyan shook his head and said, no, there are 24-hour food shops, public bathrooms, and public bathrooms in big cities. Taking a shower can cost 2 or 3 yuan, and it's cheaper than going to a hotel. The system was momentarily stunned upon hearing this, but it's very hard for you. Wu Xiyan said nonchalantly, maybe, I've seen it in the video before, but this way I can save more money. At first, I thought I could find a part-time job, but I realized that I don't have the money to buy a decent piece of clothing, so I decided to pick up some junk and do tasks. Besides, she must be worried about her son, so I can help her by doing some part-time jobs in the remaining days and doing tasks at the same time. It's also good to give all the saved money to her son. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Tasting Human Suffering. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Tasting Human Suffering. But you don't need this, it's too hard. Upon hearing this, Wu Xiyan smiled and said, let me taste the hardships of this world. After all, the world I live in is also very tiring, and trying a more difficult life can improve my survival ability. In fact, when I was bound to do tasks with you, I also considered this issue. As you said, I can go to various worlds to do tasks, see many forms of worlds, and experience various forms of life. The system wanted to say, but then saw that the host had not finished speaking and remained silent. Actually, the concept you're talking about is a bit different from what I thought. I think my life is better than many people, but in my world, I feel like I'm living very hard and hope to have a lot of money to change my current life. But I know that in other places, others are not as good as me, and there are even worse and more miserable beings than me. But I haven't experienced these things, it's just a lucky heart, so I feel like I only want to be better, not to compare with the people below. The system then took the host's words and said, the host feels that they can go to various worlds to do tasks. What they need to see is not the world, but to try various people's lives in order to hone their mindset. You can say it this way. Wu Xiyan also didn't know her minimum level of hardship. With the system, it would be different. She could explore, and even after completing the task and returning to her own world, even if the system was unbound, she would not regret it. It is said that frugality is easy to enter luxury, but luxury is difficult to enter frugality. I'm afraid that for the rest of my life, I'll regret not continuing to do tasks with the system. Upon hearing this, the system seemed to think of something and immediately said, Yen, your idea is like that of those who cultivate immortals. I really want to take you to the cultivation world to do tasks. Wu Xiyan said, She didn't understand why the system's brain was pulled back to cultivating immortals, and the conversation between the cow and the horse decided to ignore it. Upon careful consideration, the system is a novice system with missing data, and it is normal for the circuit board to not be able to be converted. Yen, why don't you speak? Your ideas are very suitable for the cultivation world. Shut up, I want to do a task now. Please help me find out where I can help. The system didn't know it had caught the host's nerve when it heard this, so it had to agree. Soon, it discovered that an old lady needed to cross the road and immediately told the host. That's how we started today's task of liking and liking. After a busy day, combined with picking up things and buying food and drinks, I actually earned 37 yuan at the end of the day. For the next week, Wu Xiyan would be active on these streets. Due to occasionally helping the elderly cross the street, she would give a hand when she saw someone in need. The person selling steamed buns recognized her, and after roughly understanding her situation, she even said that she would be given half the price for selling steamed buns every day in the future. Wu Xiyan was also worried that the other party wouldn't want her money, and she felt embarrassed to buy from this store. So when she heard the half price, she was taken aback and immediately thanked her. I think the boss is thoughtful. He is also afraid of eating for nothing, so he sells it at half price. It is always a little favor to help her. I really collected a little favor value from the boss's family. Over the course of this week, she will also help pick up the garbage on the ground and gradually accumulate a positive rating of 0.3. In the blink of an eye, it was already November, and a kind-hearted person gave her a coat, so she was no longer the patched cotton jacket on her body. Anyway, she tried to keep herself clean as much as possible, and others wouldn't feel disgusted when they saw her. In addition, she did a lot of good things in this neighborhood and was seen by many people, so her impression was also quite deep. Even some enthusiastic people asked her if she wanted to go to the rescue station. She refused the other party at that time, except that she had sound hands and feet and so on. The other party finally gave up. Of course, the other party still said that if necessary, you can go there and find them, and so on. Since Wu Xiyan refused, she naturally wouldn't go. Besides, she has been here for over a month, and in 3 days, this shell will have to be laid off. Going is not to cause trouble for others, so she has no intention of going. When it comes to the issue of disposing of the shell, Wu Xiyan discussed with the system whether to return to the small village, stay in this city, or go to the city of the son of the shell. After all, she had already saved over 9,700 yuan during these days, all of which she picked up and sold. Later, someone saw that she was kind-hearted and always helped with various things, so she specially left her unwanted recyclable garbage to sell together, which also earned some money. That evening, Wu Xiyan was sitting under a bench by the roadside eating 2 hot steamed buns in his hand. Next to him was a hot water specially cooked for her in a shop selling instant noodles, and there was someone nearby who didn't need to carry a warm water bottle with them and even filled a full pot. Outsiders may seem to be silently eating, but in reality, Wu Xiyan is chatting with the system. The system sounded with a cheerful sound. Yen, our favorability score has already reached 6.97, which is more favorable than the previous shell. When this shell is laid off, it will be able to draw the lowest favorability score of 1 point. By then, the next shell will definitely be over 10. Wu Xiyan was also happy. In the past month, she had only been to low-priced hotels 3 times, and the rest of the time was spent in public places such as convenience stores and parks for 24 hours. She also thought she wanted to take a good hot shower before going to the hotel. She saved all the money in her bank card, and only gave a few hundred yuan to Shell's son. The other party was worried about her sitting in bad things, so she explained that the money was collected and sold to her subordinates before feeling at ease. Shell's son is a well-behaved and sensible person. He learned that his mother is working hard here to pick up things and sell them. He even said that he only works for 3,000 yuan per month and can save 1,000 yuan for daily expenses such as food and accommodation. Although it's not much, it's enough to support her in her hometown, so she doesn't have to pick up junk anymore and goes home to celebrate the Chinese New Year well. He won't go back for the first year of work. Wu Xiyan said he would go back in a few days, but also gave a warning to continue wandering here. Wu Xiyan said, I've noticed that as long as we're seen doing good deeds, we'll definitely receive a positive rating, even if it's only 0.01. As the saying goes, even if mosquitoes are small, they're still meat. Once they accumulate, we'll have more. We still have a week left. Remember to look for them frequently, even in nearby neighborhoods. Try to accumulate more before Shell is laid off. The system says. Don't worry, Yen. There are only 15 people who have been in need of help for over a month now. In order for you to accumulate more goodwill, I am currently monitoring in real time 24 hours a day. I will let you know as soon as there is a need. By the way, the family of the child with leukemia applied for a card number last night. Yen, do you really want to donate so much to that child? Didn't you say you want to leave it all for the child with leukemia? End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Saving Another Child. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Saving Another Child. No, Shell's son is a good child. Originally, his mother didn't leave anything behind, and I transferred 3,000 yuan to him. Although it wasn't much, it was the last money Shell gave to his son. Besides, he also has a salary, and the villagers he took him to are honest. He's not afraid of Shell's son's bad behavior, so a few thousand yuan is not enough for her son to go back to school until graduation. In addition, Shell has limited time and there is no money left for him to study. It's better to donate it to do some good deeds. The system thought about it for a while and it was indeed like this, and then said, "That's right. Are you going to give it to that person tomorrow? Well, take out all the money, then give the child's father 5,000 first, and the rest buy some things to give to the lonely elderly people living in the 11 village houses." As soon as I heard this system, I felt a bit frustrated and said, Yen, if you give money to that old man, he probably won't give us any good impression value. We've helped him several times, but we haven't had any good impression value at all. Why don't you help that old man? It's better to share it with those other people. It's okay, just a person with a good impression value of 0.01 is missing him, but he is also one of the elderly people who rest and are lonely. If someone else has him, they will definitely feel sad. In fact, I think that old man may be someone with a tough mouth and a soft heart. Didn't you hear her neighbor's grandmother say that this old man has a bad temper and hasn't done anything excessive? Although the system heard the same, it still felt that the host was too kind. However, on second thought, it realized that it was only because it saw the host's sharp and heartless side that it was bound. If it hadn't been for watching her curse and help fill the hole, it wouldn't have been bound to the host, giving them a chance to break out of the three realms of reincarnation, similar to what humans say. To put it simply, it is mutually beneficial with its host. If it chooses a bad one, it is not far from destruction. Therefore, it is very important to choose a kind-hearted host, and it should be fortunate to have chosen one. As the host said, the loss of one person's favor can only add up to a maximum of 0.5. If it is missing, it will be less, and the same goes for other places to make up for it. It should be agreed upon and not delayed. The system hummed and hummed on the brain circuit, adding another circle of points to the host's kind persona. The host is right, then let's divide it. It's really not inferior to his own favorability. Wu Xiyan didn't know what the system's brain had supplemented, but he agreed and didn't explain anymore. Xiaojiu, I've decided to stay in this city and write a last word or something. Once I'm done with it, I'll leave. The system said, this is also possible. You mentioned before that you were considering going back, but I think the mountain and ditch are too far away. You have been sleeping outdoors for a long time, and I feel uncomfortable watching me work hard and even vomit in the dark while taking a car, let alone the one you personally experienced. So I think one time is good, I don't want to go through a second time. When the remaining money is enough to pay for the shell processing fee. The system and Wu Xiyan have each sentence spoken. After eating, Wu Xiyan went to pick up things again. He didn't find a windproof place to sit down until after 11 o'clock. The system found those who needed help and went to help, and then made do with sleeping until the next morning. As usual for over a month, it's a habit to go wash up and clean up before going shopping and eating. Then, as before, I finish the household chores of the elderly person I need to help with, and then go to the bank to withdraw money. 5,000 yuan will be sent to the father of the leukemia child, and a portion of the remaining money will be given to a lonely elderly person. She will carry the remaining money with her. After finishing all these tasks, it was already almost evening. Originally, Wu Xiyan still bought instant noodles and bread as usual and sat on a bench by the roadside to eat. But after coming out of the lonely elderly community, the system said that a child from a community near the Bay Area was missing, and the system happened to detect that she was on a nearby road, so she didn't go to buy food and just went to the location stated by the system. "Isn't it a human trafficker who brought it here?" the system said. "It doesn't look like it's true. I guess it was lost when the adult wasn't paying attention." "That's good, Xiyan, walk towards that small alley and it's right across the road from there." According to the system, Xiyan walked through a small alley and arrived at a large road, with cars coming and going. "I happened to see a 4 or 5-year-old child walking alone on the roadside, with not many pedestrians there." "Wow, Xiyan, that child is coming out of the road. Hurry up and cross the sidewalk." Xiyan naturally saw it too, so she almost ran to the sidewalk and happened to be at the green light. When she crossed the pedestrian walkway, the child had already crawled out of the fence, obviously going straight into the lane. "There's a red light over there, please run quickly." Xiyan ran wildly, following the people crossing the road and seeing the children in the distance, as well as the oncoming vehicles. At the critical moment, Xiyan carried the child and rolled back to the edge of the fence. The child seemed to be startled and burst into tears, with many people gathered around to watch the thrilling moment. "It's so close. Xiyan, both your knees and arms are injured. Is this child yours?" Xiyan immediately shook his head and said, "It's not mine. I sat over there and looked at her for a while. She was alone, probably someone got lost." "Oh, you're injured. Hey, thanks to you just now, otherwise this child's life would have been in danger." "It's okay. Could anyone with a mobile phone please call the police? This child is probably lost." "I have already called the police, and the driver of the small car just now also came over." As soon as Auntie Na finished speaking, someone hurriedly said, "Hello, I'm the car driver from earlier. Sister, you're injured. I'll take you to the hospital." "No need, it's just a skin injury." At this moment, the patrol also came over. After some understanding, the patrol first asked the car driver to take Xiyan to the hospital for wound cleaning and medication, and then they all had to go to the front police station. Xiyan had no choice but to follow her to the hospital. When she returned to the police station, the child's parents had already arrived and were grateful to her. After the police had fully understood, the three parties left separately. "Xiyan, I've been working hard for almost 2 months. Let's go have a good meal. I'll eat again tomorrow, I've eaten well all day. It's too late tonight." By the time Xiyan had dinner, it was already past 10 o'clock in the evening, and that thrilling moment still left her with some lingering palpitations. "Xiyan, I feel uneasy in your heart. Did you feel scared because of the scene when you saved the child?" "Well, the thrilling scene is a bit scary. I've never encountered such a dangerous thing before." The system immediately said, "Xiyan, you may encounter it again in the future. You should try to adjust your mood as much as possible." The system is right. Xiyan knows that encountering her again in the future is certain, and she really needs to adjust her mood. Xiyan looked around and said directly, "I will, but I have gained a lot today." End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Emergency Layoffs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Emergency Layoffs. The system says, doing high-profile good deeds can increase your favorability score. Now it has a favorability score of 7.38, and it will soon reach 8. Upon hearing this, Xiyan said, "If that's the case, can we hope that the next shell will be like a doctor or a celebrity?" "Don't think about it, this is impossible. The shells we can use are all screened, and the tribal witch doctor may be your turn." Xiyan, with a bewildered expression on his face, asked, "Tribal shamans? Aren't they primitive tribal shamans similar to X country?" "Yes, the food and drink are all different, and what you know is just the dirt method, falling behind enough to doubt the kind of life you have." Upon hearing this, Xiyan's head suddenly swelled. It seemed that she thought it was better not to go to such a witch doctor. Just imagining it was enough, and going there would probably be uncomfortable. She said, forget it. I still hope not to go so far and stay in our Xia country. After all, the living standards here are much better than in other countries. Yen, anyway, it's the last day of tomorrow. You've been busy for almost 2 months. Why don't you go to the hotel to sleep tonight and give yourself a day off tomorrow to eat the street snacks you've craved here? No, don't encourage me. I have to save some money. The system saw the host strongly refuse, knowing that it could not be persuaded, and it truly felt the host's hard work. Wu Xiyan felt like a drifting duckweed this month, but gradually she adapted to it. Perhaps she felt like she had reached the bottom line of her hardships and pulled it down again. Another thing is that she thinks it's a good topic to write about the experiences of this world. After eating, he wasn't actually sleepy, but Wu Xiyan still went to the place where he used to sleep. However, I don't know what happened today. That place was occupied by people and there were still a few drunkards. Unable to rest at a fixed rest point, Wu Xiyan simply strolled around, picking up things on the way and chatting with the system. In the early hours of the morning, she went directly to a 24-hour fast food restaurant to find a seat to sit. Her phone was the lowest equipped old man's phone, or was it not given to her by others, so she took out her phone to write daily logs. In the system's view, the host is helping the shell write a personal testament, so it is also interested in it. After finishing writing, Wu Xiyan covered her head and slept. Before falling asleep, she would chat with the system in her mind or ask the system to play a lullaby for her. Actually, most of the time, the system plays a lullaby. After all, this is the fastest way to fall asleep. The next morning, the last 16 hours of this shell's lifespan were left. After washing in the bathroom of the fast food restaurant, Wu Xiyan buys a breakfast here. In fact, it's her favorite fried rice noodles, porridge, eggs and milk, which is the most delicious meal in the past 2 months. My money, yen, eat it, you can't take the money with you. Today is a reward for your hard work for the past 2 months. Wu Xiyan didn't say anything because she had already started eating. The system is correct. She has been making instant noodles with steamed buns mantou for the past 2 months. Today is the last day of being laid off from work. How can I have something delicious to eat? Anyway, I won't waste too much meat and fish, so I just buy my favorite food. Yen, won't you take a nap today? No, we still need to earn a fixed favorability score. Alright, then I'll activate the detection function now. If you need help on the way, you can go and save up your favorability score. I remember it was a big park over there, so let's go there. Anyway, we can choose to lay off there at night. In the morning, let's go help them one by one. At noon, let's go there and have some delicious food. I remember you wanted to eat the pig's foot rice from that restaurant last time, so now I'll plan the route for you to go out. Wu Xiyan remained silent and buried her head in eating breakfast. By the time she finished eating, the system had already planned a route for her to help those people in the morning. With a well-designed roadmap in the system, she only needs to walk around to help, and her favorability score will be reached one by one. Approaching noon, I finally finished my work and gained a wave of positive feedback. Although everyone was only 0.01, according to Wu Xi's philosophy that even if a mosquito is small, it is still meat and as long as it is earned, it is good. The whole person became happy and their footsteps were much lighter. In other words, walking with wind is like Wu Xiyan. Yen, eat the pig's foot rice you want later, and ask the boss to help you with more pig's feet, so that you can have a full meal. Of course, I also have to eat tonight. Ding. If an unexpected event occurs, you can accumulate positive feedback. With a sudden ding, and then a sentence was broadcasted, both the system and Wu Xiyan were stunned. Wu Xiyan first came to his senses and said, "Do you still have such a function?" "What event?" "Found Yen. The little kid riding a bicycle on the right front of the road." Go. Before the system could finish speaking, Xiyan had already started running like a gust of wind, because at this moment a large truck was charging straight towards the little kid who had already ridden a bicycle to the center of the road. Shouldn't it be the brake pads missing? I'll go. Pain blocking enabled. Xiyan pushed the child and his car to the guardrail, and when he turned around, the truck had already arrived, leaving only the driver's words echoing in his mind. Quickly dodge. The truck driver had already given up struggling, so he shouted and charged his truck straight into the green belt next to the isolation, in order to slow down his car. Despite this, the entire car collided with many green plants and eventually overturned to the ground before finally coming to a stop. The people around me have now regained their senses. Those who report to the police and those who make emergency calls make emergency calls. She was seriously injured. Everyone, come and help, hold down the bleeding area. I'll help. There was a cluttered saying in her ear, and Xiyan only felt her whole body limp like mud on the ground, feeling like she was falling into darkness. Before losing consciousness, she heard the system say that she had taken off her job target, so she peacefully fell asleep. The new employee regained consciousness, and Xiyan's previous experience still lingered in his mind, but he clearly felt as if he had a nightmare that was unreal. When I opened my eyes, I found myself lying in a dark place, with a cold air rising from the ground. Hiss, it's so cold. Yen woke up, this is our third shell on duty. The previous shell triggered an emotional weakening protection mechanism due to an unexpected event. Do you feel any other discomfort? No, it's like having a nightmare, it feels pretty good. This person has wrinkles all over his face, how old is he? Forget it, just show me the information. Okay, Yen, take a look at it yourself. I was just checking the situation around me and sensed that you woke up and stopped rushing back. Well, then you can continue. I'll take a look at the situation with the shell first. The system responded and went. Xiyan wrapped a strange-smelling blanket around her body, looking warm, but she couldn't help but shudder before checking her job identification information. End of this chapter.